First of all, Dhanyavad Ashokji for introducing us, and Dhanyavad to everyone who came before me for bestowing me with your knowledge. And so we're going to start now. So first, what we're going to do today is we're going to explore India's history and we'll test the theory that Indus Valley was the oldest civilization in India. So we'll be reviewing research from many different fields, including archaeology, paleontology, and chemistry. So we'll start with what is generally believed. First is from Mason. So it's believed that India's prehistory was just people who migrated from Africa about 60,000 years ago to 55,000 years ago. Then the Bronze Age civilization of IVC, Indus Valley civilization, was from 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE, with the mature phase being between 2600 to 1900 BCE. There were some pre-IVC developments, for example in Mehrgarh, that are not given much credence because they're thought of as minor. So, going further on what is believed from Max Moeller, it's believed that Sanskrit had its origin outside of India and that Aryans, cattle herders, and nomads wrote the Vedas and brought the Sanskrit to India. They also they're believed to have written the Rig Veda, and it's also believed that Mahabharata and Ramayana are from 500 BCE and the Purans are from much later, 400 to 1500 BCE. So we'll start with evidence that we have found. We'll go ahead with cotton. So an Indian species of cotton, Gossypium arboreum, was discovered in the Tel Saf archaeological dig site in the Jordan Valley in Israel. That was dated to about 5200 BCE. Then a similar species was discovered in Mehrgarh and dated to about 6500 BCE. Now, in the Rig Veda, it is mentioned that Maharishi Grihitsmad wove cotton into clothes, so that would date that section of the Rig Veda to before 6500 BCE. So now we're going to move on to mice. So the house mouse or Mus musculus appeared in India about 1500 BCE, 15,500 BCE. And this is important because mice only show when there is a large amount of grain storage, which can only happen when habitation is permanent in one area. The house mouse moved to the Mediterranean by 13,000 BCE, to Europe by 1000 BCE, and North America by 1600 CE. Now we're going to move on to Dwarka ruins. So Dwarka, now underwater ruins, had an area about 5 miles by 2 miles and was 120 feet underwater. It is known to have been drowned basically by a global swell in sea levels around 5,500 BCE. This swell also formed the Black Sea, which was a freshwater lake prior to the swell. So now we're going to move on to Poompuhar, which was a large seaport. It was known because it had the sea levels 360 feet lower, and it went 19 miles into the sea. It was been submerged 4 times total, and it was a Chola port 2,000 years ago. Now this is important because it had a lighthouse, seawall, inland waterways, and could berth 70 to 80 ships. But the best part is it was around 18,000 BCE, which I think you can tell that's a bit older than IVC. Now we're going to move on to evidence from South America. So in the Ramayana, Sugriv describes the Andes in vivid detail in Peru. So we know that in Monteverde, Chile, there was habitation from about 14,500 years before present. The Bering Strait land bridge was ruled out for the South American settlements because of the 2 ice sheets that covered any area above what is now St. Louis, Missouri, the two ice sheets being known as the Laurentide and Cordilleran ice sheets. There's also a genetic admixture of South and Central America and Asia, as in the DNA from both areas, the genes were revealed to be quite similar. It's also mentioned that Mahabali, Maya, and Virochana visited distant lands and Patal. So now we're going to move on to ancient agriculture. So in the Horton Plains in Sri Lanka, which used to be part of India before sea levels rose, there's been evidence of rice farming, wetland rice farming, and evidence that they also grew cereal, like not the thing you eat for breakfast, the actual grain, and grapes. There was also evidence of a solar flare. So ice cores in the polar regions of the world, Arctic and Antarctic, tend to preserve certain isotopes of certain elements. The tree rings also preserve these, and it was revealed, and they have been shown. They show that there was a large burst of isotopes around 7,176 BCE, which was also clarified by a large solar flare, which unleashed amazing worldwide auroras and heavy lightning upon the world. Now we're going to move on to Agastya of India. So the Agastya star or canopus has an allegorical tail referring to it, and the cycle is every 25,772 years. The allegorical tail aligns with the path of Canopus and was dated to be about 19,000 BCE, which and to document that you need to have a society that can write down. Next, we're going to move on to gomphotheres. So gomphotheres were four-tusked elephants, which were only found in the Americas. But in the Ramayana, they are mentioned to have been guarding Ravan's palace in Lanka. We know that Ramayana is dated to around 12,000-1200 BCE, and the gomphotheres went extinct in 11,700 BCE, which is in alignment. So it's sometimes thought that Sugriva brought some to India from South America. Now the Saraswati River. So Blinghorn et al. Was a study using fluvial geomorphology that was done on the Saraswati River banks, which are now dry, by drilling cores into the riverbed. They determined that it was a very powerful river from about 172,000 years before present to 26,000 BCE. Theories state that it was still strong during Mahabharata, and when a river is this strong, there is likely to have been habitation along its banks. Now I'm going to move on to haplogroup I. So this is a study of migration out of India. It went to coastal Africa, Mediterranean, North Africa, coastal, and Western Europe, all the way up to Denmark. There was a presence of large admixture of haplogroup I in coastal populations compared to inland. Now we're going to move on to a Y chromosome bottleneck. So there was a study done by Carmen et al. In 2015, which determined that there was one Y chromosome for every 17 X chromosomes in 5,000 BCE. And we know in the Mahabharata, 4 million out of the 5 million men died, and there were 5 million women alive, which is in Greater India. Now this means there was a 1-to-5 ratio of men to women, and the Y to X ratio is usually 3, and the Y to X ratio is usually 1 to 3 or 4 traditionally. So if we multiply those 1 to 3 by 1 to 5, we get 1 to 15, which is similar to Carmen's results. And there was a study done in 2018 by Zhang et al., which determined that this bottleneck was due to a patrilineal war between cousins. This sounds a lot like the Mahabharata, doesn't it? Also, if you determine that, if any of you are Mahabharata experts, and you have determined that the Mahabharata is between 5,000, is like around 5,500 BC, you may start celebrating. Now we're going to move on to the Surya Siddhant about around 7800 BCE. The Surya Siddhant was updated many times, but the last time it was updated can easily be tracked to 580 CE. The longitudinal data in it, however, is off by 20 degrees from today. So 20 times 71 degrees per year is about 1420 years, which is about 580 CE. The latitudinal data matches 7800 BCE, even after allowing for obliquity slash proper motion, which means that all data that we have researched aligns with the data in the series. So this is only some of the evidences that I was able to find with my limited research capabilities, and many of them corroborate each other. It's easy to imagine how much more information exists on this topic, or that will be discovered soon. So it's hard to see how 3300 BCE to 1900 BCE in this early civilization could be the most ancient civilization of India. So there's a very blunt conclusion. History progresses one funeral at a time, is a common saying. The historian community is very conservative. It will often cripple itself and reject new and challenging data if that data challenges their established paradigm. So I'm going to use the a quote from great scientist Max Planck to uh, convey my feelings. A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, rather because its opponents die and a new generation grows up which is familiar with it. Namaste, and thank you for listening.